This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. And fall is almost here. Football is back. High school football in the state of Iowa is opening up this Friday. College football is opening up this coming Saturday. To kick off football season, we are bringing in the all-time winningest coach in Iowa high school history, 8th nationally. His name is Tighe. Tighe, across 63 years of coaching high school football, won 432 games. He is an absolute living legend, and he is joining the Moonlight Graham Show this week. Tommy Griffin and myself, we went up to Webster City, Iowa, where Coach Tighe lives with his wife, and we interviewed him in his basement. It's a really, really great and fun interview. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. And, frankly, Tighe, even though he won 432 games, his high school coaching record is actually in jeopardy. He might be eclipsed here as Coach Pizzetti out of Ankeny Centennial. He's been the co-head coach at Ankeny Centennial for the past 10 seasons, and he's within 1 or 2 wins of tying Coach Tighe right now. So we had to get Coach Tighe on the podcast before his record potentially gets tied or broken. And I've got, of course, personal history with Coach Tighe. He came back to St. Edmund to be our football coach in the fall of 2002. Tom and I, we were both juniors in high school at that time. And at that time, the Mighty Gales probably had the worst football program in the entire state. I think we had won something like 4 total games over the past 5 seasons, and we had lost our previous 20 consecutive games. It had been over 2 seasons since we had won a game at that point. Coach Tighe comes in, and frankly, he changed the football culture at St. Edmund almost immediately. Like we kind of felt like we had no chance to win. He steps on campus at St. Edmund, and right away we won our very first game with Coach Tighe at the helm. And here's his track record at St. Edmund. And granted, it didn't start off all that hot, but you got to remember how bad the program was before he got there. So he got there in 2002. We went 3-6 his first year, then 4-5. 8-2, 11-1, 7-3, 6-3, 9-2, 5-5, 5-4, 9-2, 9-2, 13-1, 12-1, 5-4, and 2-7. And that was his run at St. Edmund in the early to mid 2000s there, and it was really remarkable. If you had seen St. Ed's program before and after Tighe, you would never have believed what he was able to accomplish at Fort Dodge St. Edmund. So it was so great to reconnect with Coach Tighe. Tommy and I, this was a lot of fun for us. It was very personal for us, and also to get some of Coach Tighe's stories on record, because the guy can tell a story and the guy can coach football. I mean, he kept things so simple, and Tom and I get into it, so I'm not going to get into it too much here. If you remember from our last episode that we did in the car at the Field of Dreams, when I forgot to switch on the microphones, and so you have the ambient noise of the road, same thing here with Tom and I. You can tell we're in the car because I made a mistake with the recorder. So if you want to jump in the car ride with Tommy, you're going to enjoy this. So it's about 10 to 15 minutes of Tom and I doing an introduction of the episode here, talking about our experience. We had just gotten done interviewing Coach Tighe, and then the interview or the episode goes to Coach Tighe's basement, where we talked with Coach Tighe for about an hour and 10 minutes. The first 20 minutes or so of our conversation with Coach Tighe is really more about his childhood, his growing up, him going to Notre Dame, him joining the Army, and about 20 minutes into the interview, we really get into him coaching high school football. And so that's how this one goes. This was a real treat. I know he's a legend in the state of Iowa, a legend in high school football nationally. You guys are going to love this one with Coach Tighe. Enjoy it.
All right, so we are in the portable Moonlight Graham studio here as we are on the road trip home from Webster City, Iowa. I'm riding shotgun here. This is Tom Griffin, the trusty co-host, with Moonlight himself, Tim behind the wheel.
Behind the wheel.
We are on Highway 17 behind a semi that I know you are itching to pass right now. But we are heading back home from an awesome, 2 hours with legendary high school football coach Dick Tighe. And we just want to kind of almost debrief and process how much fun we had, how interesting it was, and really then also set the table for this interview for everyone.
It's almost impossible to cram in 63 years of coaching into an hour interview. I think we did a decent job of it, but that interview could have gone 3 hours if we wanted it to, I think.
I mean, it could have gone until the batteries ran out. I mean, Coach Tighe was sharp as a tack. 90 years old, almost 91 years old. He was dropping names, years, scores. Like, he was talking about specific plays. Like, at 90 years old, sharp as a tack. It was so fun to listen to him, get kind of a history lesson. He still got passion. You can tell he loved being a coach and being a classroom teacher. He loved the players he had, the students he had. I loved it.
Well, and I've known Coach Tighe's story because he coached me, he coached you, he coached all of my brothers. And, we grew up reading the newspaper with Coach Tighe being this legendary coach over in Webster City as well. But even in this conversation today, I learned so much about his story that I didn't know, including coaching up in Canada, which I thought was really interesting. But his path to Notre Dame was fascinating to me. I knew he was a Notre Dame grad, but I had never heard that Notre Dame story. And for a second there, because we did the interview in his basement, surrounded by trophies and team pictures, it kind of felt like we were on the set of Rudy.
Oh,
in like the Rudiger basement. Didn't you get that vibe?
When he said, let's do the interview in the basement, and we went down the stairs, it was like walking into a museum.
Yes.
You expect a guy with that much success and accolades to have trophies and memorabilia. Literally, entire walls covered in all the different plaques. Coach of the Year, Hall of Fame, winningest coach for this, program history for that. Then, the thing I thought was really cool was he had team pictures from darn near every team.
I think he said every team.
He did have every team. So we found ourselves on one wall, and then he's got his Webster City teams over here, and that covered a whole wall because he was there for so long. But just to kind of give some context, so Coach Tighe became our football coach at St. Edmund for the 2002 football season. So we were juniors in high school. I had played for Coach Jeff Anlicker for 2 years, and we didn't have any success, right? We had really struggled. Loved Coach Anlicker, still love Coach Anlicker. We just didn't have success. And so he went to Manson, and Coach Tighe was hired. And we knew we were getting something special because he had already had hundreds of wins. He'd been coaching at that point for 5 decades. And so he comes in, takes over a program that had not won a game in 2 years.
Yeah, when you said not a lot of success, we had the longest losing streak in the state at that point. I think we had lost 20 or 21 consecutive games.
I remember, so our first game with Coach Tighe, we played at Clarion Goldfield. We won the game. We rushed their field. Our fans rushed their field. And then we were on the bus ride home. And the Friday Night Football call-in show said, and we got big news tonight, the longest losing streak in the state of Iowa has been broken. Nashua Plainfield with the win. So we were, I think, 1 game short of Nashua Plainfield's record. But just the winning 3 games as juniors in high school seems maybe silly to some people who, they had a lot of success, like my wife likes to remind me Jefferson did. It was so fun to win football games. Then we won 4 games as seniors. But really, after those 2 years, he turned St. Edmund into a very successful program. 8, 9, 10 wins a year, going to the Dome, state championship game. Really, he stood the test of time. Consistency is something he talks about in the interview, and really his career demonstrates that.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Tom. We went from having the second longest losing streak in the state to the first year we're there, we win 3 games. Second year, 4 games. The next year, they're undefeated in the regular season. The year after that, I think they got to the semifinals. And then it was just playoffs after playoffs after playoffs. I don't know if they missed the playoffs for another 10 years after we graduated. It was remarkable what he did. And the amazing thing about it was, you're asking, well, how did St. Ed's even get this guy to come? It's because he had been previously forced out at Webster City, I think probably for being too old. They thought he was too old or out of touch. He goes then to Iowa Falls for like 4 or 5 years, basically dominates there as a co-head coach up there, but then they kind of force him out there, probably because they think he's too old or out of touch. Then he comes to St. Ed's in his late 70s and instantly turns that program around. I mean, even though we only won 3 and 4 games his first 2 years, we were in about every game, and it was night and day a different football culture from the moment he stepped foot.
It was interesting to talk to him and kind of hear his stories and a little bit about, how things had stayed the same and how things had changed over, his 6 decades then as a high school coach. And really, he just talked about some of those same things over and over. His offense was different when he started out because he talks a little bit about his time at Notre Dame and learning that straight T offense.
Yeah, he basically just copied Frank Leahy's offense, which pretty good guy to copy.
Yeah, not a bad model. And then he kind of learns the belly and kind of makes it his own, adapts it a little bit. He mentions that, but really his consistency, and he emphasized the simplicity. So, he's telling stories about coaching at St. Edmund in the 1950s yet, and then at Carroll Kemper, which I also coached at Carroll Kemper for 1 year, but he coached at Carroll Kemper in the 1950s, and then Webster, maybe by the 60s at that point. But the way he was able to tell these stories, and really, it's the same story over and over. He used his strengths. He passed the ball when he needed to or when he had the guys, but he had story after story about this running back, this offensive lineman, utilizing the farm boys, the way he organized practice even.
The funny thing is, him and his wife are waiting for us with their dog in their garage. They got their chairs set up in the garage as Tom and I pull in. And as soon as we walk into the garage, Coach Tighe asked Tom, hey, how's your finger? Didn't you dislocate your finger up at that game at Eagle Grove?
That's the first thing he says to me. He goes, hey there, tight end, and you dislocated your finger. And I said, yeah, and you had Coach McKinney just put it back in place right before the game. He goes, yeah, it didn't hurt me at all.
And then he remembers the play that I got hurt on.
Yes.
He remembers the you hurting your finger, me hurting my knee. That was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And the way he had countless stories that we didn't record those first probably 20 minutes in the garage where he's talking about this guy and that guy and this season and that game. And he was like an encyclopedic knowledge of his career. And I think that speaks to his passion and just the success he had. But he joked that he goes, you mostly remember the bad things when he was giving us, a little crap about our injuries. But I think it's just so funny we just sat down and tried to tell him. I think he said, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. But man, he knows everything. He remembers it all and just had a story for every topic and every season and every game.
I think my takeaway for playing for Coach Tighe is he was a legend, and we've said it before, but he made everything so simple. And as a quarterback, and I say this in the interview, my job was to handle the ball because everything is about is being like a technician, from the linemen to the running backs. All those details matter. And so handling the ball, carrying out the fakes on every play, doing the handoff fakes to the up back when you're giving it to the second back, all of that stuff really, really mattered to him. And that's my takeaway, is like the details matter, but he didn't overcomplicate things ever. And our practices were always between like an hour and a half and 2 hours. We never got much more than that. We never conditioned hard. The weight room wasn't this biggest emphasis, but we knew our job and we could do our jobs really well. That was my takeaway. Tom, you played for him for more than I did, though.
I think my takeaway from that conversation as a player was, I told him this and I wanted to tell him how much I enjoyed playing for him and just what a positive experience it was. But I think as a coach now and looking back at those are things I want to emulate, that keep it simple, because that's where the enjoyment is. He said something to the effect of players have fun when they're having success and they know what they're supposed to do, and then obviously winning. And I think that's just wisdom. I think in sports today, things are so complicated and overcoached and overstressed. I think keeping it simple, and focusing on making it a positive experience. And the success came along with that. I mean, obviously he was a competitor. He wanted to win. He remembered the losses. A couple times he talked about getting revenge against teams who beat him by 40 points one year. He beat him by 40 points the next. He wanted to win. But I just think that's something to take away. And I think another takeaway that I had was, I don't know that things have changed as far as working with kids all that much over the last 60 years. And he spoke a little bit about his teams in the 50s and 60s and some of those more recent teams. I don't think there was a real difference in it. I never got like a kids today or kids these days kind of message from him. I think working with kids has kind of always been working with kids, and I think he had a true passion for that.
I thought what was interesting too, I was expecting like, hey coach, why'd you become a football coach? I was expecting him to have like some coach that he had or that he was trying to emulate or idolize, and he didn't really have that. But his military background actually had more of an influence on his coaching style than like his playing career or something like that. So that part of it was really interesting to me, and I never knew he was actually drafted into the military too. I mean, it's just kind of, it's crazy that we sat down today and talked to a guy that was drafted into the military, and all his brothers were as well.
And he started out with his high school football coach and served in the Battle of the Bulge. I think when you think about that, I mean, we're talking 1944 in Europe, and then comes back and coaches high school football. And one of his other comments was he didn't know a lot about football.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that his life experiences, and I think that memorabilia means a lot to him, and those photos of players. And he talked about seeing people that he coached and still having a relationship with. And I just think that there was a lot of really great perspective. It wasn't all about wins and losses, although he sure had a heck of a lot of wins. But it was about relationships, and it was about giving kids opportunities for success and having a passion for what you do.
Dick Tighe was the head coach of the Shrine Bowl, which is kind of the all-star football game here in Iowa for high school athletes. Takes place in the summer. When he coached that in 1979, his defensive coordinator was Barry Alvarez.
Unbelievable.
How about that one?
He had pictures on his wall with a couple with Paul Rhodes, I saw.
Dan McCarney, Lou Holtz.
Lou Holtz, on the big picture of him with Lou Holtz. Like, his connections in his career, like, man, there are stories for days. So many things that aren't in the podcast that he could have gone on and on.
Oh, yeah. We could have spent an hour on each season of his career, I think. That could have been a 60-hour podcast.
Yeah, easily. And he was with it. He was sharp, and he, those, like, the names of some of his players and the stories and the stats, and unbelievable.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. Tom and I, that was pretty special, I think, for you and I to do that. And it was funny as we're looking at our team picture from that fall of 2002. You and I were next to each other.
Yeah,
in the
with
team
him
pit.
right behind us.
Yeah, with him right behind us. So 19 years later, we're still doing it. And that was a real treat. So
absolutely.
I hope you guys enjoy this one, because I know it was special to the three men in that basement today.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.
All right, we're sitting in Coach Dick Tighe's basement. When I say we, the trusted co-host Tom Griffin and I are sitting in Coach Tighe's basement. We're surrounded by pictures of every team that you've had, maybe all 63 teams that you've had, plus trophies, plaques. This is a pretty unbelievably cool basement here, Coach. Thank you for sitting down with us here for this interview.
Oh, you're welcome.
Coach, I guess the first question is, all those years ago, when you first got into coaching, why was it that you wanted to coach football?
Well, growing up, you got to remember my background. I grew up on a farm in a small town, Homer, Nebraska, about 15 miles out of Sioux City, Iowa. And it was in the 40s, and the war was on. And after the war, Notre Dame had those great undefeated teams, and Army was good, and we followed all that on the radio, of course. But we also we had a lot of work to do, a lot of chores. We milked a lot of cows and had cattle and hogs and the whole lineup. And then you know, we lived a mile from town. We had to run to school. We get into high school. We wanted to went out for football and basketball. Well, my dad was not much in favor of that. He liked baseball because that was one of the older sports. Well, we just said, just go to the house. We'll get the milking done when you get in. And so we played football and enjoyed it. And football coach was not very knowledgeable about football. He's the basketball coach, and he had been in the Battle of the Bulge. He'd come back from the war.
Wow.
And so my brother was in my class. He got redshirted about the third grade. He failed. We moved from another school. He didn't pass. So anyway, he was a year and a half older than me, which made him a lot better athlete, I guess. He was bigger, and he was a fullback anyway, and I was a quarterback, and we weren't too good. We weren't too bad as seniors. Well, at any rate, my dream had been to go to Notre Dame, but of course that was really just kind of a dream. So my mother was pushing it. My dad I was the first one in 9 kids to go to college. I was number 7, so
wow.
Everybody's supposed to get a job and go to work. Well, at any rate, I went to Wayne State for a year and a half, and I wasn't a very good student. I was out for football, and then I had a job, and every weekend I was supposed to get home and help on the farm and stuff. So, meantime, I had written to Notre Dame about see if you could transfer. Well, the only time they take transfer students that semester. So I talked to my mom, and anyway, I got accepted, and so there was another kid from the county. I knew his family, but he was a senior at Notre Dame. He kind of took me under his wing. Thank goodness he did. I never got to South Bend, Indiana. So we got on the old Hiawatha out of Sioux City, and boom, 6 hours later we're in Chicago. And then
is that a bus or a train?
Trains.
Oh yeah.
That was Milwaukee Road. It was the best train across Iowa.
Oh, of course.
And now it's not even there anymore. But anyway, we took the South Shore down to South Bend. That's the electric train that stops at every town in northern Indiana. And finally get to South Bend, and then the next he was off campus, so we stayed there. The next day, we headed out to the campus down Notre Dame Avenue. I saw the Golden Dome so I was pretty lumped up, and so he took me over where they registered, and so I got all signed up for I lost 15 hours transferring because there were courses at Wayne at Notre Dame. Mostly they were shop courses that Notre Dame didn't have, and so I was going to have to double up to graduate in 4 years. But
how did you pay for Notre Dame back in the day? Because college is so expensive now.
Well, it wasn't. No. Well, college was nothing. Like at Wayne, it was maybe $200 or something. Well, Notre Dame was about, I'd say about $1,500 a semester, but it was, of course, money was different, it was deflated. Right. But we had, all my dad had to do was sell a couple
cows,
a couple steers or something. So we never. Well, what was funny is I got all registered, got to the end, and they told me my bill that I didn't have any money. I didn't. So I said, I explained my situation. I said, I'm a transfer, I'm not familiar with it. I said, I can call home and they'll have the money here in a day or two. So they said, that's fine. So I did. So then they transfer students, they stick you anywhere. They got an opening, people that graduated that semester. So I got a senior hall, 314 Walsh, about 2 doors from the Dome, which was great. And my roommate was also a transfer student. He was a history major. He's going to be a lawyer, and he was a very serious student. And and down the hall from us, we were 314 walls. Down the hall was a Heisman Trophy winner at 325, Leon Hart.
Leon Hart.
He was a tight end. He was a pretty big guy in those days, you know. But
I feel like he's from Pennsylvania.
Turtle Creek, Pennsylvania.
Turtle Creek, Pennsylvania. Yep. My grandpa told me that one the other day.
And then the other tight end roomed with him, Bill Whitekin from Chicago. And see, in those days, scholarship football players had jobs. One guy's job, he had night check. Now, the lights went off at 10 o'clock. You better have your studying done before that. And then he came around to make sure you were in. Friday night you could be out till 11, and Saturday night 12. So they were pretty confined.
Wow.
Well, it didn't bother me, but some of the kind of spoiled rich kids, they were always griping about the rules. But and then you had mass check 3 times a week. Down at the chapel. You had morning mass. So all you did, you get up a little early, go down there, and then go to breakfast. So that was my routine. Well, anyway, I got started, and then I was taking biology and a few other, and my first test, it looked like somebody bled on it. You know, I think I flunked everything. And I thought, man, my dad is going to kill me if I don't. So I started studying, which meant as soon as you finish supper, you better sit down and hit the books, because the lights are going to go off. So I adjusted. Anyway, I got through the first semester. I had one tough subject, was Spanish, and I didn't have any. Notre Dame, you had to have a language requirement, so it was a deficiency I had. So I had to take that for no credit, and 70 was passing. I got 70 in it.
Perfect.
Only I was in with a bunch of little Spanish majors, and they were pretty smart. So the second semester I got 72, so I really improved. But I think I explained it to the teacher that I was not a major, that this is a high school deficiency, and I think he had mercy on me because I didn't have to repeat it. Well, at any rate, got through the first semester. Second semester, now I'm a junior, and I've taken a lot of courses in PE I was a PE major with freshmen, courses I had to make up, and some with juniors, and I was kind of, and most of the kids all had their buddies and everything already, so I had to kind of be flexible, and so they had a really good PE program. I wanted to coach, but we got all these other things, minor sports, and things we had to activities we had to learn. Well, anyway, endured that, and then the football coaching staff for football theory class were supposed to come over. Well, Coach Frank Leahy never showed. He was the head coach. He and the head of the PE department, I don't think, got along too well. And the athletic football offices and everything over by the stadium, and all our classes were, a lot of the PE classes are in the Rockney Memorial, which is at the other corner of the campus. So, but some of the assistant coaches did come over, and and then I would go to practice. I took a look at all those guys, and
so you'd go to the football practices.
Well,
with Frank Leahy's team.
Yes, but not very often because he didn't. He
probably wouldn't let outsiders in very often.
No, not even PE majors. Some of them said we need to observe if we can. But if they had an open practice in the stadium, the scrimmage, I went, and he was a tough guy. I'll leave it at that. guys that lose their teeth, and you say, "Here, get back in there," and the players, because I was in class with someone. Surprisingly, not very many football players are in PE. Most of them are in commerce or something. But well, at any rate, I had to make up classes. I took a couple at Morningside in the summer to make up some of those I lost, and then doubled up. So I did graduate on time. And Notre Dame has inner hall tackle football.
I've heard about it. I think they still have it, too.
Yeah, they do. And I coached Kavanaugh Hall anyway.
So you didn't play, but you coached it?
Yeah, inner hall, yeah. And,
were you running the belly?
I think I ran the old Notre Dame straight T formation.
Okay.
He coached.
Well, that had a pretty good winning percentage to it as well.
At that time, all around where the stadium is were soccer fields and practice PE fields and stuff, and that's where we played had our practice in our games, and we didn't get to practice a whole lot because the kids had classes, and getting them over there, and then they would just draw the west end of the stadium, go in there, and they'd get equipment, used equipment. So, but it was experience anyway. And the winning team got to go up and play the prisoners at the Michigan City, Indiana State Prison. They only had home games. They didn't let them have away games. So,
do you want to win?
No, we didn't win. Make it. And the championship game they got to play in the real stadium on a Sunday afternoon. We didn't make that either. But it was fun. And then some of our practice teaching was freshmen had to have so many hours of PE. And you'd have get a list of 30 players or people or so, and they come out and then take roll, and then we'd give them exercises and then play soccer or something. Well, anyway, I graduated finally in '52 and went home, and a month later, 2 months later, Uncle Sam called. I got drafted. I'd been deferred to and my oldest brother was in World War II. My next brother was on the farm, so he was deferred. And then the next two were drafted in the Korean War. One went to Germany, and the other one was in Korea, but he ran a bulldozer. He wasn't. So then I got drafted, and I went to Fort Leonard Wood, down in the Ozarks, and that's where my brother had been the year before. We went down to visit, and I said, boy, this is a hellhole. And he said, well, and then he was on his way to Korea, and my mother and I was at Notre Dame as junior, and my mother died real sudden.
Oh.
And so I flew home, and then he came back from San Francisco for the funeral, and then he went back. So he kind of got into another company, but he ran a bulldozer, and so it was safe. It was safe work. And so I go to Leonard Wood then for basic training, and then you could put in second 8 weeks. Everybody takes infantry. The second 8 weeks is combat engineers. And so you could also put in for schools. So I put in for clerk typist school. I looked like the closest thing to college, and I got in. And then two from our company got in, and then it was an 8-week course. We finished it, and then they pulled 3 guys in, 3 of us. So how would you like to be instructors, because other guys are getting out of the Army? So I became an instructor, and I was also the physical training NCO, get up on the platform, lead the Army daily does, and the kids, the students, twice a week they had PE for an hour from 5 to 6, and twice a week we had dismounted drill. They had to get their M1s and fall out. We'd march them around, and so that, and then otherwise I was just teaching classes. I taught military law. I stayed one chapter ahead of him. Every 2 weeks you got to do a different class. So we turned out class every 2 weeks. So I thought this is better than getting shot at in Korea. So and then meanwhile I was in love. We were engaged. So found out you won't get sent overseas when you got a year to go. So we went ahead and we got married in Sioux City, and for our honeymoon, I borrowed my brother's car and we took all our belongings to Rolla, Missouri. I had rented an apartment, so we got there. I went up, took her up to the apartment. I said, "We got to share the bathroom with this other couple." And that didn't go over big, but what really was, she said, "Go to the kitchen, go ahead and dampen this washcloth." And I went out. "Honey, there isn't any kitchen. There isn't any sink." She says, "I'm not living here." So she said, "Let's go uptown and get the paper." And well, we discovered there was an apartment for rent over the stores downtown Rolla, Missouri. Rolla was, I suppose, 20,000. Now it's really the School of Mines is there. Now we went through there a couple of years ago. Man, I didn't recognize anything.
A lot bigger?
Oh, yeah. And Route 66 went right through there. Now it's I-44. Well, anyway, she got a job, Margot, you probably remember her.
Yep.
Well, at the hospital there, and I got a ride back and forth with another guy. And he was a cowboy singer, and he was from California. He called himself the California Rambler. Well, he got a 15-minute job on the local radio station. Well, he didn't have a sponsor or anything, but he sang every night, and so I'd listen. Well, the guy that did the sports there, play-by-play for their high school games, was going to miss half the season or more, and they were looking for somebody to do the play-by-play. He said he told them, "I got just the guy. He's got a football background." So I became an announcer, and we did the Rolla Bulldogs. I think we went clear down to the Arkansas border, all those towns down in there.
Wow. And
for about half the season, and we got paid $15. We split it. My buddy did the commercials, and I did the play-by-play. Then the other guy came back, and that was the end of my...
your announcing career?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then I think it was the end of January of the 54, I got promoted to sergeant, which meant now you could get a trailer house on the post. And we went out to dinner, and meanwhile we were expecting our first child in about 6 weeks, I guess. And so after we went out with another couple, and then we were going to go for a ride. And Margot says, the women there in the back, she says, "If we're going for a ride, let's kind of drive towards the fort." She was starting to have contractions. So they got closer and closer, so I was driving faster and faster. I got to the post, and I just slowed up a little bit, and their MPs are there. I says, "Hospital." And so they took in after me and had an escort right at the hospital.
Wow.
And she was in there half an hour, and we had our first baby.
Whoa.
She weighed about 4 pounds, 5 ounces. She was really that was Merity. And so it was tough, and she had to stay in the hospital. I had to move all her stuff then and clean up this trailer, and it was better than driving every day. Meantime, we had our own car. Well, so we finished. We finally got the baby home and got her going and fattened her up a little bit. And I got out of the Army. We went to Canada then. No, I got to look for a job.
Right.
So I
In
wrote.
what year is this?
1954.
1954, you're out of the Army, you're looking for a...
Well, I'm not out of the Army. I'm in the Army, and it's hard to go looking for a job. So I finally I wrote back to Notre Dame. I wrote to the football office, even to Leahy, and I got a letter back saying, well, Leahy had gotten canned or fired or dismissed, whatever you want to call it. He wasn't the coach anymore. So he forwarded my letter to Moose Krause, the athletic director. So I got a letter back, and there were 2 assistant jobs, and one's a head all-boys school, Cathedral Boys High School, Hamilton, Ontario. I said to Margot, how would you like to go to Canada? Canada? And I said, well, get an atlas, let's see where that is. So it's between Toronto and Buffalo, or Niagara Falls, about 40 miles from Niagara Falls. At the west end of Lake Ontario, Toronto is up there. It's a huge place, and then Buffalo is down here, east end of Lake Erie, where all the snow falls. You know, Buffalo gets drenched with snow, and Niagara Falls is there. So I contact this bishop. He was a big Notre Dame fan. The previous coach had been from Notre Dame, so I had that in my favor. And we never ever talked. We just emails back or telegrams.
Yeah, telegrams. Emails.
Yeah, telegrams. And finally, one day I get a call from the post chaplain. Now there's 27,000 troops there probably in training, and there's probably 3 Catholic chaplains, and the only one I knew was the one that baptized our baby. And I got a call. He walked in. He says, "Oh, I know you." And I says, "What's the deal?" He says, "Well, some bishop from Canada is calling me in, asking about you for a reference." He said, "I can give you a good reference." And
wow.
So that worked out. So next thing you know,
you're coaching football up in Canada.
Yeah. He says, "Congratulations, They were the Gales too.
Oh, no kidding!
The Cathedral Gales, and we were kind of like Dowling, all boys school, and we had lots of Italian boys. My first backfield was Frank Cosentino was quarterback. He later played in the the CFL, played for Western Ontario College University. Frank Cosentino, Miko Poliziani was one of the best backs I ever coached.
What a name.
Oh, man, he played with Montreal later, but oh, man, was he tough. A hard runner. And then I had Dino Galgani at the other halfback. We had one Polish guy, Ron Habros. He became a surgeon later. These kids are all smart. And,
how long did it take you? Obviously, you became known for the belly.
Yeah.
Right? For the power offense and running the belly. You wrote a book on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're at Cathedral. You got a great backfield. How long did it take you to kind of develop your offense?
Well, I ran everybody there. We ran the old straight T.
But from Frank Leahy. That's what Leahy ran.
Yeah, yeah. I had the book on that. And 2 tight ends. But now the kids said, "Hey, we got 12 players. What are you going to do with the other guy?" We're flank him out there. They'll have to cover him, and then we'll play 11 on 11.
Get rid of him.
So
they played 12 players in Canada.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
2 guys in motion. Did they have that?
You can have backfield motion all the time, and I didn't utilize it much because that takes timing.
Yeah.
And well, we ran the dive a lot with Miko, with Poliziani and Galgani. God, they were good backs. And the other thing, these kids, the high school, there's a grade 13, and they had 9 subjects there. And usually they took 2 years to get it, and that was the equivalent of first. You could get a bachelor's degree in 3 years then.
Oh, cool.
So I had kids that were 19 years old. Man, I had some tough ones. And our big rival was Central. Oh man, they were huge. And so we played all the public schools in Hamilton, and we played them twice, and then they had the playoffs at the end. No, wait a minute. Yeah, I know that we started off, we played St. Jerome's from Kitchener. We beat them. That was a non-conference and then we started the city series, and we played Central, and they beat us in a real close game. Well, and then we won all the rest, and then we met them in the finals, and man, we just killed them.
33-12.
Yeah.
Well, it's written on a football right behind me. I bet Cathedral ended up beating Central 33-12 because in this basement we're sitting in, you've got memorabilia and autographed footballs and helmets all over the place.
Well, Jimmy gave me those up there, those helmets, my son. Well, and we just totally dominated them, and they had some really good players, and a good quarterback and wide receiver, but we kind of shut him out. But so then the next year, we had a lot of these kids coming back. But Cosentino, we didn't have him, I don't think. But and Poliziani got hurt, and then in those days they had a red feather game in Toronto. It's the same as the equivalent of
like the Shrine Bowl or an All-Star game or something.
Yeah, it's a charity thing.
Oh.
And we, the best teams played. So we represented, we were okay. It was in the middle of the season. We went up there, we played at Etobicoke High School from Toronto, and they edged us out. But I think we lost 2 tackles, so the rest of the season was a disaster. We did get in the final with Central, and they beat us 43-0.
Oh, jeez.
So I remembered that. So next year, now let's see, Miko was back. He was and we went through the season undefeated. The championship game we played, we beat Central 30-43, the exact score, and then we played Westdale in the championship, and we won it 56-0, I think, and. So that was one of the best teams I've ever coached.
Now, Coach, when we played for you, Tom and I think one of the takeaways I had from playing with you is practices were really simple.
Yeah.
Like everybody, I played quarterback, Tom played tackle and tight end, and Tom played on the defensive line as well. And it seemed like you were really, really good at just letting everybody know what their job was, and then everybody got really, really good at their job. And so as a quarterback, my job was ball handling mostly, with the belly and the wedge and the second man. I had to get really good at the fakes and the ball handling. And all the linemen, they got really, really good at their job, and everything was really simple. How long did it take you to kind of develop those systems for practice?
Well, I never was complicated. I mean, everything, even at that time, we ran the straight T, and we had equal number of running backs. And then that 56 team I took a kid that was a running back and made a quarterback out of him, Tommy Troy, and I still communicate with him. In fact, I stayed at his house when I went up there to get an award a few years ago. But yeah, and he could run the keeper too, man. He was fast. So that's when I started using the keeper. Cosentino was more of a drop back. He could really fling the ball. But so yeah, well then I always emphasize keep it simple. The kids just want execution. You can't you got to have repetitions to get execution. I learned that in the Army, by the way. We'd get guys in that could hardly walk. They're running like they've been walking through cornfields all their life, flopping along. And after 8 weeks of marching, this basic thing, hut forward, left, right, and all that, they could really march in a parade. And so I thought, apply the same thing in football. Simple things, find out how to execute the shoulder block, and that's what they used in those days. Of course, you couldn't use your hands like you can now, and then do it over and over and over till you get good at it. And the kids, all they want to have is success. They don't care about it. I mean, you could stand there, and I've seen coaches talk for half an hour, explaining their offense and showing off how smart they were. The coaches, the players are looking at the sky, and it's cloudy, and they're not paying. They don't care. They just want to win, execute, and have fun. And the fun is being able to go out and beat somebody. So I always had to. Sometimes I'd get a little, and the coaches would remind me, "Coach, that's not your stuff. Let's run the belly." And then I got. I kind of went to the belly and then the I formation. Then I could have the one back then became a wing back who helped with the blocking right behind the tight end, usually kicking out, and the tackle was blocking down. And then you can run the belly from that, and then get a pitch to the tailback, or run the keeper from that. And then the nice thing in the eye, the fullback could lead, give you an extra blocker, and give the ball to the tailback. And your cousin Neil, that was a big play with him. The other thing, I wanted to get all the best linemen on one side, so that would be the strong side, and that's normally where you'd go. And then we learned flip-flop, come out of the huddle, so you didn't always have to go to the right, you can go to the left.
So I want to ask you about that, because Tom, you were talking about this on the way up. So you would flop the line. So say Tom's playing left tackle.
Yeah.
And we run left behind Tom, but then if we want to run right, we put Tom on the right tackle then. Well, wouldn't the defense just know you're going to run behind Tom?
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. We're going to block them. Yeah, they would, but I'm getting to this. From the eye, by the way, in that set we'd have a split in. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes we'd keep him tight.
Yeah.
But if he wasn't there, you can run the blast, that's the tailback, to the weak side, just one-on-one block, no double team. But the fullback can kick out the end then. The fullback becomes the lead blocker. Mm-hmm. And so you can run to the weak side, especially if they got everybody over on the strong side.
Right.
But you got to hopefully have some quick guys over on the weak side.
Tom, what was that like as a lineman for you to flip-flop, right? To play on the right side of the line one play, and then the next play you're playing on the left side of the line?
I mean, for us, going back to what you were saying about keeping it simplistic, I coach 8th grade football now, and that's one thing I've really learned from you is kids do better when they don't have to think about it, when they know what to expect. And so I was the strong tackle, so my junior year I was the strong tackle, and so most of the time I was on the right. I feel like we were pretty right-handed, but we were strong side and quick side. You'd break huddle. Like, my job never changed. And I think just the way a lot of defensive schemes work is they have to play their responsibilities, so it's not like they could overload one spot. And if they did, there was a counter, or you could do something to the quick side, weak side. But it really simplified the game for me. And I think another thing I took away from playing for you was I loved football. I loved it my first 2 years when we didn't have really any success, but I loved it. But playing for you, practice was fun. It was kind of light. We worked hard at the things we did, and as long as we didn't screw up, we just kept moving forward, and we kept the repetition going. So it simplified it. So no matter what the play call was, and there were only like 6 play calls, I knew what I was supposed to do. Yeah. And if the guy lined up head up or inside, or if I had to go to linebacker, it just simplified the game and just kept it fun. It just allowed me to play and hit.
And then with the belly, I put the best back at fullback, and then we're going to use him a lot if he's good and durable, and I've had some good ones. And then, or some years we might be more tailback oriented, like I told you. And because Neil, your cousin that year, he had tremendous speed, and I never forget the play. He broke loose against, I think, down here, Central. I can't remember. Well, the team, I got to think of the team, but they had a lot of speed. And this guy,
Wes Marshall,
this great athlete they had,
Furch, yeah.
Yeah, he had an angle on him, but Neil scored. I think made it. That was a guy. But we got beat by. They really had some horses. Those brothers. They finally ran out of them, I think.
yeah, they had like Duncan and Dalton Furch.
Yeah, Furch.
400-meter runners.
And another thing, I kept trying to make things simple. The other thing, somebody was telling me they were at Notre Dame, and they were right in the huddle with Parsegan almost, and they're just dictating the plays. They don't even have numbers.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a good idea. I mean, everybody knows where the belly's going. So they get the huddle. First of all, you got to call the formation: strong right or strong left, and usually a strong right, belly right, and they know what the deal is. And then here's the other thing: we would simplify the cadence. When I first got to Webster City, we'd come up and say down, set, hut 1, hut 2, and so on. Usually always went on 2, and they'd been used to the quick huddle, and one of the assistants says, why don't we just go on 1? And I says, I don't care. Sounds good. Simplify it. The other thing, then we got rid of just one sound. Get up there, get down, go, and away we went. And then, of course, the other team started to jump on that. Then we had a Mayday call. Did we have that with you?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Well, Mayday, we were going on 2.
Yeah, that was always a big thing. When we were going on 2 in the huddle, we'd always, hey, we're on 2. That was always like on 3rd and 4.
Yeah.
On 3rd and 4, we're going on 2.
Well, then, on the way up to the line of scrimmage, because you had some linemen that weren't real bright, maybe.
Yep.
I
can vouch for that.
Well, they're used to just reacting to the sound, so that now they got to think. So one lineman, they'd all be saying back and forth, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. That means 2, and we're going on 2. So that usually, and boy, that really got some first downs when they needed to.
So let's talk about passing.
Yeah,
because you didn't pass a whole lot.
No, that's a sign of weakness.
And well, the funny thing about St. Ed's, and I don't mean to be skipping over your great career at Webster City, because obviously the majority of your wins came at Webster City.
Yeah.
A lot of your accolades, championships, all that stuff came at Webster City. But our recollection was when we played for you at St. Ed's, and we had the worst team in the state when you came on board. Mm-hmm. And then within 3 years, we're in the playoffs, and undefeated. And immediately, you're winning 10 games a year. Everybody says, we need to be passing more. And it's almost like everybody forgot how bad we were, 3 years before. Yeah. And it was always kind of funny to me that it's like the solution to the fan base is always we need to be passing more. Yeah. How you probably heard that for 60 years in a row, though.
Yeah, at every school.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, it's passing is, whatever you emphasize. If you emphasize it, but passing, you got to have more skilled people. You got to have somebody who can catch it. Somebody can throw it first, and then it takes a lot of, and then you got a pass block, and I don't like linemen. Instead of coming off the ball, they drop back a step in their pass block. Mm-hmm. They should be going forward. And it's hard to teach both. And the running game is much more consistent. Mm-hmm. You got to. Well, we got 10 yards. We got 4 downs to get it. So we ought to be able to. And if we get inside the 40-yard line going in, we probably have 4 downs instead of 3 to get. So I think that was it. It was. It's easier. Well, whatever you emphasize, and if you have, we threw the ball pretty good at St. Ed's when we had some good passing quarterbacks.
That 2006 team threw a lot. My brother Joey's class in 2009, when you had Baldwin as the tight end, and my brother Joey was the split end.
Well, who was that quarterback?
And John Engler was the quarterback.
Yeah.
Engler could put it up. Josh Bradley before that could put it up.
Yeah.
Sam Condon had a lot of success for you.
Oh boy!
Well, then you threw it to Pete a lot too, with Bakken as the quarterback.
Yeah.
So you threw a bunch.
Yeah, we could throw.
I'm just giving you
when you needed to.
Well,
I remember when you. It must have been in August, like at camp or something, because we didn't do summer work. I mean, we had weightlifting, but we didn't do like summer practice like they do now. But I remember when you told me that you were moving me to tight end. So my freshman year, we didn't win any games, but I played center. My sophomore year, I played guard. My junior year, I played tight end. And then you told me right before senior year I was going to play tight end, or my tackle, sorry. And then senior year, I played tight end. I remember one of the first things I did was I went to the sporting goods store, Dunham's, and bought a pair of receiver gloves. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. That's probably the worst money I've ever spent in my entire life. And so I played, and Andrew Doster was our quarterback our senior year, the lefty.
Oh, yeah.
And he threw 2 passes my way, and neither one was anywhere close. I think I only went out on 4 pass routes the whole season. I was just an extra blocker, which makes a lot of sense.
Timmy was banged up, so I had to find somebody. I took Doster, who was a running back, made a quarterback out. I'd done the same thing in Canada, and passing didn't matter. I mean, he was a runner.
Yeah.
And all he had to learn to run the belly, or
I remember you would call, because I still remember this, you would call 860 belly bomb.
Yeah.
I was the 0, which was no route. And I was staying into block.
Yeah.
860 belly bomb, and I'd be like, damn it.
Yeah, well, I did use numbers for pass.
Just for pass, yeah.
Because there were different routes you took. But the belly pass was the home run.
Yeah, to Nicholas, not to me.
Well,
I don't know what I would have done if I ever caught a ball anyways.
Formation right, belly bomb, that meant that splitting is going right down the middle. Mm-hmm. And probably the tight end might have blocked or went out in the flat. And then the wing back, sometimes we had a lot of 2-man routes because we needed, I'd like to have maximum blocking. Yeah. Besides, and this is one of the hardest things to teach, quarterbacks, they make that fake and they drop back. They're zeroed in on one guy. Mm-hmm. It's hard to come off in high school, and I tried to teach that some. Look at that guy and then throw to this guy. But they're going to zero on one guy and get rid of it, which I like to.
Well, that was always easier on the bootleg.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had a little bit more time and you could get out from the line, whereas like the belly bomb, you're faking to the fullback, then you're faking the belly as well. So you got multiple fakes. So by that time, there's not a lot of time to look at multiple receivers.
There's two different.
There's
the belly pass and the belly second man pass.
That's right.
Yeah. So that one, but if the old second man was going well, that was another thing I liked out of the eye. You could fake the belly and give it to the second man going through. Well, actually, the fullback runs over guard on that. It's a wedge, fake the wedge.
That's right.
Second man. And boy, that thing opened up. If the fullback was successful.
I got a question for you. I just remember this on our extra points. We would do the swinging gate. Mm-hmm. Remember that, where we had everybody lined up to the left, and then we check how the defense was set up for it. And if they weren't set up right, we would hike it right then, snap it, and then throw it quick to the back. And then, how long did you do that?
We always did it.
Always did it.
But we very seldom ever. We usually.
It happened maybe a couple times a year, though.
Yeah. I wanted to get the extra point if we had a good kicker, or if we'd missed one and we needed 2 points, we might just come out in the power. By the way, goal line offense too is different. That's when I had a wing back and a setback and the fullback. It was the only 2 plays, the belly and the keeper. They didn't know that, but because then we had the extra blocker leading up through the hole, and that was always pretty good down on the 2-yard line or something. But, anyway, I always got back to keeping it simple. Same thing with the practice. We had the same routine. We'd stretch. We used that Iowa drill where they, we duck walk and all those things, and then we had stations,
Yep.
And I'd like to use the block them. We had a lot of sleds and the ropes, and then the headache machine, that blaster the kids went through with.
I hated that thing.
I know
Yeah.
everybody. We had to. Well, it was probably you had to use your helmet to break that one, I think, and I had two of them. I got them from Webster City, by the way. The coaches that followed me never used them, so I had a friend. The guy here says, "You want those? Come and get them." The same thing with a lot of those hand pads we had.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I helped the budget.
Yeah.
But and then and that 7-man sled too. There was he said, "Do you want it? They're going to take it to a scrapper." And I said, "Well, is it okay?" And he said, "Well, it's got one bar. It needs welding. I'll weld that for you." And I said, "Oh, great. Well, how are the pads? Because those are expensive." He said, "Well, I called the coach. They were a year old. They didn't hardly use it." So we had a couple of good sleds on the deal. But we had that same routine. The kids knew it was that and stations where you got conditioning. And then the linemen went over and did theirs on the sleds and the backs, whatever. We had to work in defensive drills then, just the linebackers and D-backs and like you guys that played. If you played on defense and after you did your blocking, you came over, And then we had supposed to have half an hour of offense and half an hour of defense. Sometimes we had to shorten that up. I wanted to get out of there at 5:30, 2 hours. And we always started at 3:30, which meant you had to get out of class and get up there and get out in the field. And so, and you knew you were going to be done.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Like coaching today, coaching 8th grade, I don't have any responsibilities in the summer, but they're doing summer workouts, not team camps even, just like practices. Like they call them 7-on-7's a big thing, but position drills and meetings, and and I think some of that has changed over time because the way they use film and they share film online now, and the game planning is different. But I think part of the way you designed it kept it enjoyable. Because it was able to be fun. You weren't beaten down at the end of the week. You weren't exhausted. You weren't getting home at dark every night. Like, I think part of the way you designed it was very efficient, and I've tried to copy that a little bit with my kids. But I think that the simplicity made it efficient. We were able to do what we needed to do, and there weren't a lot of questions. I do remember some story times where you would tell some stories or say something funny. Like I remember you said from your time in the Army there wasn't a single North Korean who got into southern Missouri. So you had done your job. That is like my favorite.
Not one communist.
Not one communist in Missouri. You did your job. But I just think there's wisdom and knowledge in being efficient as opposed to practicing all summer long. But the game has changed a little bit.
Well, the other thing, you needed to get all your work done. Now, some coaches, when I was at Iowa Falls, the head coach, all we did is look at films all Monday. I'd be way at the back. The room would be dark. I'd go to sleep. Well, now the tapes are available. Kids can get them right off, and they can have that all done.
You don't need to spend a whole day doing it.
No, on Monday we'd have a meeting, but we're not more than a half an hour.
No.
Let's get on the field, get something done. Get something done on Monday. Tuesday we're going to do what little hitting we're going to do, because we got to do some live, a little bit of live scrimmage. A lot of times we had hand pads to work on, but Tuesday was a big night, and Wednesday was special teams. We had to go through all that there, and you got to. When I first started coaching, I remember we get to Thursday and I said, "Oh my God, we haven't practiced kickoffs or extra points yet." So you got to work those in, and then no matter what, Thursday was going to be a light practice. You gotta rest the legs.
Yeah.
We'd get up there and go through everything real fast and get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was a road game, we'd talk about traveling. But I know I've heard coaches talk about, boy, we scrimmage right on Thursday night, and I thought, that's dumb. You're leaving your game on the practice field. They got to be. You can't be. You got to be ready to go. And
I know it's probably impossible for you to do this because you've had so many great teams through the years. But when you think about like all the teams that you coached at up in Canada, Webster City, Iowa Falls, St. Edmund, is there one team that sticks out? Not so much maybe that was the best team, but like that was the team that listened the most, and we got the most out of that team.
Well, there's about 3 or 4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
My 56 team in Canada really had some stud players on that played in the CFL, some of them, and college. And then at Kemper,
I forgot you had a Kemper stint in there.
Yeah, I went to Kemper for 4 years, and I was at St. Ed's. When I got out of how they get to Canada and back here. That story. My wife graduated from Heelan in Sioux City, and Father Kelly, Monsignor Kelly,
mm-hmm.
was her homeroom teacher, and she knew him quite well. And we were home from Canada and going back at Easter, and she says, "Well, we had to go through Fort Dodge." She says, "I'd like to stop and talk to Father Kelly." I says, "Okay." Meantime, I saw in the paper that the Dodgers had a football opening. So I said, well, I'm going to go over. They don't know me from Adam. So I dropped her off at St. Ed's, and I went over there and I was a walk-in and explained and of course, I never heard anything back from him. But a month later, I get a call from Father Kelly. Says, I got a football job that's open. Would you be interested in that? So we talked it over. I took a small pay cut. I said, it'll get us back in the States, in Iowa, close, because I've got big family I'm from, and
mm-hmm.
she had the rate in her family around Sioux City and Omaha. Well, so I came back, and that year, and I ran a boys' camp out of London, Ontario. A summer camp by their diocese. This priest hired me. I had it for 2 years, and it was a good summer job. Going to camp was a big thing in Canada. And kids came from Montreal and all over. They tried to learn English. Well, anyway, I couldn't leave that camp until I got all these kids' parents picked them up. So we didn't leave London until afternoon, and we got into Michigan. I think we got to, Battle Creek or someplace, and stayed overnight. Next day, we drove all the way to Fort Dodge. I even got a ticket in some little dorky New Buffalo, Michigan. It was a fixed deal. Well, and then we stopped in Webster City. I mean, there used to be a drive-in on the East End Bashes, and then we stayed in the Marion home.
Oh, wow.
Until we got a house.
Huh.
That Marion home was right across from the old the dance hall, the Twilight or whatever it was called. Starlight, yeah. And so the assistant coaches, I don't know if you knew them, he was the basketball coach, ball-headed guy.
Wiedenfeld?
No, way back.
Oh, boy.
Now, you don't remember. Well, he and another guy they got started. I had all the yearbooks. I had the lineup already set, just from what I was reading about him. I had a good quarterback. Lawler was his name. He could throw.
There's still Lawlers going through.
Yeah, a few.
Yeah. And Risseter was a running back. He was fast. And then, you got the guy that Flaherty has an insurance agency.
Jim Flaherty?
Yeah, Mick.
Or Mick
yeah.
Flaherty, yeah.
Don't you know? Mick was the right halfback.
Oh.
Mick Flaherty?
And Risseter was the left half, and Micus was a fullback. He was a good running back. We were in
All those names are still around.
That's hilarious.
But Mick Flaherty, I told him one time at practice, I was mad at him or something. I said, Flaherty, you're the slowest back I've ever had. And every time I see him, he said, I know, I'm the slowest back. So it's a big joke now. But he was a good kid. Well, Kemper beat us, and Kerrigan was good in those days. But I was really impressed. God, Kemper came out. They trotted out all these. I mean, it was a big school. So, and I knew the AD down there. He had coached at South Sioux City. They were in the same county as my hometown. So that job opened up, and I thought, God. And then this is when St. Ed's had Hansard, Fitzgerald. Those Fitzgerald boys were good football players too, but they were basketball. And that was the year they were supposed to go to the state. And Whitney was a basketball coach. He was not very smart. I was the head basketball coach in Canada. I forgot to mention that. We won 3 city championships. The other 4 years we were last. But we didn't have a gym to speak of. But no, Whitney, that was the coach. And I was the assistant, but I had the JV. And we had a good team.
So you had that good team at Cathedral, and then you get down to Kemper, and you have a good team there.
And I got to Kemper, and they had one, but you got to understand, Kemper's got about 10 towns around there, not that many, but they all feed in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of friction between the wrestling coach and the head football coach and all this. And this one guy said, I don't know how you ever made a team out of there. I said, well, I don't even think it. The hardest thing was those farm boys. They all were feeding cattle and
Sure.
And Daddy said, you get home and do the chores. Oh, we had a tackle 225 and we had him for about 3 days, and then he didn't show in pre-practice. So we went out to see him, and the dad saw us coming, came out of the house. Says, I thought he was going to have a shotgun. He says, you guys, I know what you want. You might as well turn around and leave. That boy has got work to do after the cattle. I says, Danny Bach had a really good coach, line coach at Kemper, and I says, Danny, let's get out of here. I think we're going to get shot at. So we played that first year there. Our tackles were 175.
Oh wow!
I know they weren't, but they came off the ball pretty. Went 5-2-3. No, went 5-2-1. And the big game at the end of the season, we played an independent schedule, by the way. We did. I think we beat Dowling. Dowling wasn't such a power in those days. But Heelan was. They killed us. And first 3-4 games every year. Sioux City East, we tied them once, but we never beat them. That was the only team. Fort Dodge High. And they always beat, but we tied them once, and then last year, and I had the studs. 52-0, we beat them.
Fort Dodge?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we had Heelan. And that last year we beat them, and then the next one was Dowling, yeah. And then after that, we always played Lamar's because they were looking for games. They were independent. Then we'd play Council Bluffs, and always we played Des Moines teams, especially all like North and so on. That year. Well, anyway, that was the first year, but that last game we played Bishop Ryan out of Omaha. And I knew my in-laws are all in Omaha, and they know this coach there was telling the kids on the way up, after the first touchdown, you can kick the extra point, and you can kick the one after the second test, and all this. Well, guess what the score was at the end of the first quarter? 14-0 Kemper. And guess what? It ended up 14-13.
Oh, jeez.
We held them off. Oh man, that was and Father Donahoe
Oh, yeah.
Was the Big D, we called him.
Mm-hmm.
He loves football and sports, and he loved beating the other Catholic schools because he knew all the priests there. See, and so.
So who are the other two great teams that you had?
Well, okay, mention the one Cathedral team. Well, I think maybe the best, although we had one loss, was the last team at Kemper.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had a quarterback. God, he was good. And then Larry Perot, my running back, they couldn't tackle him.
Mm-hmm.
He got a full ride to Missouri. Trouble is, they brought in a great big boy from Texas that was bigger than him. He got the fullback job. But we went up the East. I didn't have people in the right place on defense yet, and we got beat 30-26. But boy, I said then we beat the heck out of Dodgers. I mentioned it. And then Heelan we beat pretty handily, and then Dowling. And Jim Williams was coaching there.
Yeah.
They came to town. At half, it was 35-0 for us. He was bitching about me. Excuse me. He was griping about everything. From the kids were sick and all that. But we threw some passes on him. I had a good wingback basketball player, could block and catch passes, but that fullback had quarterback, belly, keeper, boom. But that was a good team. Might be, but then we lost it, and then we got tied by dang it, which one of those that was down there in Des Moines? One of those teams. We were ahead 14-0, and they had a lot of speed,
mm-hmm.
and that was always our downfall. Playing north, and some of they tied us, so we ended up 7-1-1. But they could we had some beautiful linemen,
mm-hmm.
big guys, and could block and everything. And then, St. Ed's, the team that got to the finals.
Yeah.
That was poor old, what's his name, was fullback.
Vinny Harvey.
Vinny, yeah.
Vinny, yeah.
And, that Regina, I was sitting.
Oh, yeah,
They should have been playing 5A or 4A.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, too, the dang referees. I mean, there was glaring holding. They come on the sweep, and then you got to reach block.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to get your head out there and try to. Well, they were just blatant holding right in front of you. You could see it. I'd scream and yell about it, but they didn't pay attention to me. But, and the trouble is, you play a team like that, they take away what you normally do, and then you try to go to something else, and you try to throw. We did throw some against them.
Right. Yeah, I remember Landon Pete had a couple good plays.
Yeah.
I remember watching that game.
Yeah. Well, anyway, those are, I think, the teams.
Well, Coach, we got to hit the road here, but really do appreciate you, taking the time with us. This has been awesome to get a chance to chat with you here this morning.
Well, it's a good life. I didn't mention that. I was forced out at almost every job. You have a bad year, and they think you're. Well, I think they succumb to downtown pressure sometimes. We got to get a modern coach in here and all this stuff.
Yep.
So when I left here, they brought in a guy. He went 0-9, and then.
Well, that's how it goes, right? Is everybody the expectations everywhere you've gone? You've raised the expectations so high that everybody feels like they need. If we just start doing something different, we can get over the hump or whatever.
Yeah.
And they forgot what got them there.
Yeah. Well, and then you get different administrators come in, and then some listen to downtown, a few critics, and I won't. I could have kept going at St. Ed's. We ran out of material there after those two dome teams, but we went 5-4, I think, and then the next year I was starting 5 or 6 freshmen.
Yeah.
We were really out of horses, and we won the last game though. Up at the last game I coached was up at Sioux Central. It's at Sioux Rapids, and they got a turf field.
Oh,
yeah.
Somebody
real
donated, and we scored on a block kick. The freshman picked it up, Bembrick or whatever, ran it in. He was supposed to not rush. He was supposed to be on the return. He rushed in, blocked it, picked it up, scored. So it ended up 7-7. They pushed us all over the field. Then we went overtime. My place kicker was injured. So I can't remember who the fullback was. We finally got him back, and he said, I can kick him. So I said, okay. So we kicked the field goal from the 5-yard line. Then they had the ball. I said, God, there's no any way we can stop them because they run quick huddle. And we stuffed them. And the last play, we threw them for a loss, and we won.
And that's how you went out.
So you won your very first game at Hamilton. Is that? And you won your very last game.
Yeah.
And
last one was
not a lot of losses.
Not a lot, yeah.
Oh.
I think I read you only had 5 losing seasons total.
I don't know if I had that many.
4 maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
I was on 2 of them. So I don't know. I don't know how many people could say that, but we were 3-6 and 4-5 in the 2 years that I got to play for you. But those were pretty fun years.
Those were great years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great life, and I look forward to it every year. And not only that, but I enjoy teaching. I mean, I had history classes. I fought the Civil War every year. Once in a while, I let the South win. Maybe. But sometimes coaches get a rap that they're not all they care about is football. But I had 7 sections of history here in Webster City. 7 out of 8 periods a day I had history. So then go out and coach. So But I liked it, and then I had driver's ed. For 45 years, I taught driver's ed. Everybody in town here, I think I taught to drive. I told them,
safest town to drive in Iowa.
I said, well, you're still alive. They always tell me, oh, you were my driver's ed teacher. So
must be going well.
Well, I emphasized fundamentals. I made them parallel park about 12 times because that's the hardest thing to do.
I know,
so instead of just out driving, I had 12 periods or 12 half-hour driving sessions, and so I emphasized fundamentals there too.
Everywhere you went, you did.
Yeah.
Always a fundamental.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Coach.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with Coach Dick Tighe, and I'm sure you are on pins and needles about the Cosner Quest, and there is an update. There is an update here, guys. So if you remember from last couple of weeks when we've been doing the Field of Dreams stuff, I've started to get some contact information with Kevin Cosner's PR people. I haven't reached out directly to the PR people yet because I want the Field of Dreams stuff to simmer down a little bit because he's really busy right now. And so I don't want to be caught up in the hubbub of everybody reaching out to Cosner right after the Field of Dreams. I want to let that marinate for just a little bit before we reach out because I'm sure he had a lot of major media outlets reaching out to him over the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to wait on the PR stuff. But the new news as far as Cosner goes, we do have a personal connection to Cosner now. Okay, so there is someone that we know that I'm going to keep their name private, but they are going to a wedding at Kevin Cosner's farm. So our connection knows personally Cosner's son. And one of their mutual friends, is having a wedding at Kevin Cosner's farm, ranch. I don't know where it's at, but they reached out and said, hey, I will try through this personal connection to see if we can make any headway to get Cosner on the pod. And so not only do we have a couple PR contacts now, but we also have a personal connection that is going to a wedding at Kevin Cosner's ranch. So that's got to mean something. That's got to count for something. And I think the more of these arrows we're able to put in our quiver, the closer we get to getting Cosner on the pod. So we're making progress. Good work out of everyone out there. And as always, thanks to the team here at the Moonlight Graham Show for helping put on this week's episode. Brian Sandvig is our producer. Brendan Gargano does all of our artwork for the episodes, all of the design work from our T-shirts. My brothers Andy and Neil, of course, they help me out with episode ideas, and Neil, of course, jumps in as co-host very often. And then the trusted co-host, the number one co-host in our programs and in our hearts is Tommy Griffin. Tom Griffin was a big part of this week's episode with Dick Tighe. Thank you all for listening to the Moonlight Graham Show, for subscribing, for leaving us reviews, for buying shirts, for following us on social media. We appreciate it so much. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.